Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining this webinar this afternoon, or morning or evening, depending on where you may be joining this webinar from. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everybody who has logged in. I see some people have joined. I can see a few more joining. It's a little bit after 1 p.m. Central African time, so I think we can get started. I won't presume to know how everybody came to know about this webinar, so let me start by introducing myself. My name is Twape Mtila, and I am a private wealth manager at Carrick Investment Services in Mauritius. I am a wealth management and financial planning expert, and I come from the beautiful country of Malawi, and I recently became an expatriate. And working in this business since 2017, predominantly in Malawi, since I became an expat, and I have been working with clients that are also expats, the work that I've done has started to bring up several questions that seem to continue to occur and recur with the people that I speak to. So I made the decision to host this webinar today because the financial advice that I give and that we provide as an organization provides some very, very unique opportunities and solutions for people who are expatriates, nationals working outside of their home countries, irrespective of where it may be. So a Malawian working in Mauritius, a Zambian working in Doha, a Brit working in Malawi. It doesn't really matter in which direction you're moving in, but there are very, very unique challenges that are faced by expats. And that's what I want to deal with today. And I think in order to get that started, I think the first thing to do to start with is to discuss and to outline exactly who Carrick Investment Services are. So Carrick Investment Services is a wealth management and financial planning firm. We are an African business. Our head office is in Cape Town. We have over 11 offices across the region. We have offices in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Port Elizabeth, Durban, and Pretoria. We are fully licensed and regulated with offices in Malawi, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and very proud to announce that we will very, very soon be opening an office in Namibia. I sit in the Mauritius office of Carrick Investment Services. And the Mauritius office is particularly important to the conversation that I want to have with everybody today with regards to expats, because the Mauritius office is a very, very unique office. Our Mauritius business holds a global license, which means we are legally able to give financial advice to individuals that live in countries where we don't have offices. This is how Carrick has been able to grow its client bank to over 2,500 clients who are all coming to Carrick to seek very, very specific financial solutions for themselves and for their families. So that's a little bit about who Carrick is, but why does Carrick exist? What does it mean that Carrick Investment Services is a financial planning and wealth management firm specializing in offshore financial solutions? What it means is that as an African business, we've made a decision to help our clients to be able to solve the problems that are very, very unique, predominantly to Africans or to living on the African continent. We've made this decision because it is our belief that Africa and Africans, irrespective of where they live, require this type of advice and solutions because of the very, very unique challenges that exist on the African continent. For anybody that is a connection of mine on LinkedIn, you would have seen the posts that I posted, especially over the last 2 or 3 months, specifically necessitated by the devaluation in the local currency in Malawi. But the loss of value of local currencies is not unique to Malawi. This happens all over Africa. But there are some very, very unique challenges that are faced in Africa. One is that if you live in an African country, the local currency of that place is probably struggling with the value of its money against the dollar. Two, inflation is very, very high in the African country that you're living in. And three, there is always a bit of risk around election time, because in Africa, you just don't know. But it doesn't really matter where in the world that you're sitting or what it is that you're doing, because when Carrick Investment Services was established, it was established because there was an understanding that there is a need for our clients to plug specific goals, just to plug specific gaps that exist in their financial pictures. Carrick Wealth exists to be a lifelong partner for our clients traveling through their financial journey. We always start at the beginning, creation of wealth, building up of investments, building up of savings. This is vital. Wealth preservation, figuring out how you can keep your money safe. And then wealth protection, thinking about your legacy and what's going to happen when I need to pass all of this on. The Carrick Wealth motto is very simple, because it's what you have after you have it all that counts. So how does this speak specifically to expatriates? We've built this multinational business with over 200 people working in it, offering financial advice, positioning ourselves with partnerships with some of the largest, most reputable organizations in the world to be able to bring the world to Africa and take African wealth to the world. So how exactly does this work if you're an expatriate, particularly if you're an expatriate that's living outside of Africa, perhaps not earning in a local currency? Now, I have had this same journey, leaving Malawi, now being in Mauritius, and because I've gone through everybody who's registered, every single person on this call has also gone through that same movement of leaving your home country, going to live in another place, going to work in another place, earning in another currency, and all of the different things that you encounter. So some of the things that I've listed here are not only things that my clients are experiencing, it's things that I have experienced. The free movement of money. When you're an expat, moving money from where you are currently working back home, particularly if back home is in Africa, this is always a challenge. It's thinking about exchange rates. It's thinking about settlement dates and how long it's going to take for the money to reflect. It's thinking about what's the best way to get the money to my relatives and family back home. It's also the relative cost that comes, particularly when you're moving small amounts of money. So if you're transferring a small amount of money between the UK, Middle East, Mauritius, for example, into continental Africa, that can cost a lot of money. Children and education. Now, I have a 5-year-old son, but I have the very unique situation where my son is still living in my home country. But whether or not your children are with you where you are based or your children are based back home, we've been able to see that almost 86% of the clients that work with Carrick are from country A, live in country B, and have loved ones or dependents in country C. So a Zimbabwean living in Kenya, but their children or dependents are going to university or secondary school in South Africa or in the UK. What this means is that you are away from home, but you're needing to plan, manage, and in most instances save for your child's secondary school or university education. How exactly do you go about that? I think one of the biggest challenges that expatriates face is that normally the financial services businesses in the countries that you're living in maybe don't have products or services that are tailor-made to you as an individual, or there are citizenship or residency challenges where I can't open this account because I'm not a resident, or non-residents have certain restrictions placed to them on how they can go about it, compounded by the fact that your children more often than not are going to be treated as international students. How do you navigate all of this? If you are currently based in the Middle East, your children are in Zambia, and the plans for your family is that you want the children to go to university in the UK, how do you save for this? How do you plan for this? Where do you do? How do you organize all of these moving pieces? Pension in retirement. It's the third point, but perhaps it should have been the first point. As a Malawian, the moment that I left Malawi and came to Mauritius, I left my pension behind, because pensions are not always automatically transferable. But the expatriate condition also dictates that as you move through different organizations as you're working internationally, you might not be able to move the pension from company A with you to company B, so you're constantly stopping and starting and stopping and starting. I speak to expatriates all the time that are in a situation where they don't have a pension now that they've moved offshore. They're getting paid into their international bank accounts, but they are no longer contributing to a pension. So if they don't individually take out a private pension, it leaves them in a position where they're going to work for an extended period of time away from home. They're going to move back home, and unless they take the initiative to do it themselves, they won't have anything to fall back on in old age. And then savings, just simple savings. Do I save here? Do I save back home? Do I save in a fixed deposit in the country that I am based in? Do I put it in a fixed deposit in the country that I'm from, but I was living in Kenya, now I've been moved to Zambia, and do I now close my accounts and move the savings with me, and I can't keep that savings account open because I'm no longer resident there because my work? These sort of questions are the questions that expatriates are having to deal with, just as simple as having to decide where they're going to have their savings. An overweight portfolio, and this is a big one. This is a big one because many people that I speak to, what's your instinct? Your instinct is invest back home, send money back home, buy land back home, build properties back home. But I started this presentation by talking about the reason why Carrick exists, to help its clients place their funds and investments and have solutions offshore, is so that you can protect yourself from these challenges that we have listed: currency, inflation, political. You want to take that wealth and place it in a stable jurisdiction which protects you from some of these challenges that are back home. So I speak to a lot of people because they haven't had the opportunity or they haven't been made aware, that send all their money back home. So you've left, you're working as an expatriate and you're earning in dollars, but you're sending all of your money back into Pula, into Naira, into Kwacha, into Rands, whatever the case may be, because you haven't had any other opportunities. When you look at your portfolio and you look at all of the things that you hold and you look at all of your investments, the balance between what you hold inside of your home country and externally in dollars is overweight, because you're overweight in your home country because that's where everything is. Residency challenges also bring a big challenge, or bring in a big question when it comes to how am I going to organize myself as an expatriate? Because when you are a non-resident of a country, automatically there are certain things that you cannot participate in, or certain things that become more expensive. The country that I'm in, Dubai, and I'd love to invest on the Dubai Stock Exchange. How do I go about it? Am I able to do that as an expatriate? What am I going to do? The fundamentals of wealth management and financial planning are built on a very simple premise. Every single person that has ever become wealthy and stayed wealthy has had 5 things in place. There are 5 elements to every single wealthy person's financial portfolio. Number 1, every wealthy person has had some kind of an investment, right? Some sort of cash investment, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a treasury bill, it's a fixed deposit, but they've taken some cash and they placed it in an investment. The second is property, whether that's an apartment or a house, a block of flats, a shopping mall. Every healthy financial portfolio possesses property. Number 3 is protection, insurance. Every wealthy person has placed insurance on their life, on their property, on their homes, on their business, whatever the case may be, but there's some sort of protection. And as the old adage goes, you control what you can control. For everything else, you get insurance. And number 4 is a retirement package, historically referred to as a pension, but in this case, I'm referring to something that's in place that you can draw from in your old age when you're too old to be able to actively look after you, to be able to work and earn an income. And the 5th thing is private equity. And this is not private equity in the sense of investing into businesses. Private equity is the thing which you do in private that makes you money. So for all of the people that are on this call that are working as expatriates, your private equity is whatever it is that took you away from your home country that you are working on that is bringing you an income. Now, as a wealth manager and a financial advisor at Carrick, I can't advise you on your private equity. I can't tell you how to do your job better than you can, which earns you an income. But what I can do is I can specialize in helping you with all 4 of these other things. Now, why is this relevant to an expat? Because when you look at all of the things that I've mentioned here, and you channel that back to what I said about all of the challenges of either living in Africa or being from Africa, if all of your investments, property, protection, and retirement is all in Africa, then you are exposed. If you are in Africa and not from Africa, but earning there, you are exposed. Similarly, if you are outside of Africa and earning in dollars, but have not received advice on how to build these 4 things because of these challenges in the country that you are from, that is where I come in. Because if you're on this call and you're an expat, you are not at home. So where do you want to end up? Where do you want your children to end up? Where do you want to retire? And it doesn't really matter what the answer is. Maybe I want to retire back in Malawi, maybe I don't. But what does matter is being geographically neutral. I speak to expats all the time that have moved to multiple countries, and they say to me, I was living in Singapore. When I left Singapore, I had to close my account. Then I moved to Hong Kong. When I left Hong Kong, I had to close my account. What if you had something that was globally relevant and geographically neutral, that wherever you move from, it doesn't really make a difference because it's held where it is, and it is safe and secure for you to be able to plan all of these things along with all the other examples of challenges that you face as an expatriate, and you could do it from the comfort of your own home. That is where we come in as Carrick. And that is why having a offshore geographically neutral portfolio is vital. So let's start at the beginning, and let's speak about speak about the basics. Speak about banking. Just banking, a bank account where you can keep cash, earn an income, get paid dividends. Banking represents the backbone and the platform for any offshore financial portfolio. And one of the things that Carrick Wealth do is we help facilitating the opening of offshore banking solutions, which means if you are currently living in Mauritius, like I am, I'm able to open an account here because I'm currently here on a work permit. But the moment that work permit expires, that bank account will have to close because the condition of the bank opening was the fact that I was here working. If I have an offshore bank account, which is geographically neutral, that I can put money in, that I can send savings to, then it doesn't matter whether I leave Mauritius and go back to Malawi, because that bank account can move with me wherever I am without me having to close it or without me having to do anything with it. So the banking option and the ability to be able to channel funds into an offshore bank sets the platform for the entire offshore framework. Once we have that banking framework in place, all of the other elements that we've discussed then come into play. Because what we are agreeing on, and if you're on this call, what you are understanding is that there is a need to protect your financial portfolio or your financial life in some way, shape, or form in a safe, secure jurisdiction where you have the peace of mind that it is not exposed to any of the challenges. And even if you are earning in a bank account, I had a meeting actually earlier this morning with somebody that works for the UN, and they said to me, well, Twape, look, I've got my UNFCU account. I get paid in dollars into my bank account in New York. I'm not exposed to these things in Africa that you're talking about. And I said, true. So you've ticked box number 1. But then we move on to the second level, and then we talk about all the other boxes underneath, because it's not enough to just keep it in the bank. There is a need to grow, there is a need to protect, there is a need to preserve. So let's start with savings. And we've discussed all of the different challenges that are there. So let's discuss how we as Carrick Wealth help our clients when it comes to their savings. The majority of clients that I speak to come to me to talk about their savings. And what I will finish off with is how all of this then gets wrapped up into the structure of a trust. But let's, for this time being, talk about savings. Now, savings take up different roles, and in the majority of the clients that I work with, they're saving for a goal in the future. They're saving for their children's university education. They're saving because they want to put down a deposit on a property. They're saving because they want to take out their own retirement, individually, or something to supplement it. We have partnerships with some of the biggest organizations in the world, and these are just examples, like Hansard Worldwide and RL360, publicly listed companies that we are able to facilitate our clients. Once we've established that there is a need to save, we can help you, irrespective of where you live, to start putting savings away that you can build on and draw from at a later date, irrespective of where you are. So if you're working in Afghanistan, if you're working in Dubai, if you're working in Southeast Asia, if you're working in the United States, you can get that geographically neutral, globally relevant saving from wherever you are without being a resident, because all of these savings will be held offshore. But then you go on to the next step. You have a bit of money that you've saved up, and you want to be able to invest. But you don't want to be limited to the investment options in the country that you're from, and you don't want to be limited to the investment options of the countries that you're working with. We have built relationships with some of the largest companies in the world so that we can take your funds wherever you are and invest them globally. We're looking about there being no limitations to the geography, the asset classes, or the investment mandates that we can put together, or the investment strategies that we can put together. Working with open architecture portfolio bonds allows you to be able to place your funds in with mutual funds, into mirror funds, into direct traded funds, into passive income. Investment platforms allow you to be able to hold your funds freely and openly, to be able to invest into structured products, and also be able to place your money with some of the largest banks in the world, for example, Goldman Sachs. But then we talk about the pension, and we've said that this is a very, very big one. So you're thinking, okay, I've built this money up, these investments have grown. I now want to be able to place my money into a structure that pays me an income now that I've retired. So for example, I've worked for 5, 10, 15 years in Mauritius. I've built up my savings. It's time for me to go back and chill on the shores of Lake Malawi. I want an income that I can draw from my dollars that I've placed in this safe, secure jurisdiction. We help our clients to go into structured products and annuity products that will be giving you a constant income while you've retired, wherever you choose to retire, which is globally relevant. And a lot of the clients that I deal with say to me, well, Twape, I want to spend 6 months in Zambia and 6 months in Cape Town. No problem. You don't need to have a bank account in either of those countries, because you now have a globally relevant, geographically neutral, constant income going into an offshore bank account that you can access wherever you are in your retirement, which is completely protected against the economies that you might be living in or want to live in. And then property. Property is a big one for Africans, because Africans love to invest in property. We've partnered with some of the biggest property promoters and property developers in the world to be able to not only help our clients to invest in properties in Europe, but also as non-residents be able to secure mortgages. And many of my clients have said, Twape, how is this possible? How is it possible that I can be sitting in my house in Nigeria, purchase a property in Manchester, and you can get a mortgage for it? It's very, very possible. Organizations such as API Global are helping to facilitate the purchasing and investment of properties in the UK. And one that is very, very dear and very, very important to me is the issue of life cover and protection. Because all these other elements that we've spoken about don't mean anything if you're not there to contribute to them. We've spoken about children. We've spoken about loved ones. We've spoken about planning for education. We've spoken about if you're not there to save and make investments and enjoy your pension, what happens if something happens to you tomorrow? And this is particularly a passionate one for me because if I think about my own son, if I take out a life insurance policy in Malawi and that life insurance policy on my death pays out 100 million kwacha, the currency of Malawi devalued by 44% last year, which means that 100 million kwacha that I would have left to my son has literally in real terms and in terms of spending power lost 44%. Now, at the moment, 100 million kwacha is roughly worth about $50,000. Would I have more peace of mind if I took out a life insurance policy that on my death paid out $50,000 or $100,000 in case something happened to me? That is more secure, and that gives me more peace of mind for my child if I'm not here. But if we frame all of this correctly, I started by saying that Carrick Wealth is a wealth management and financial planning firm that walks a lifelong journey with their clients. My job is done when not only my clients have ticked all of these boxes, my job is also done when specifically what it is that my clients need has been fulfilled. My job is not to distribute any particular products. My job is to understand the individual circumstances of my clients and then bring them a solution that speaks to that. And the reason why I bring that up is because there's more than one way to skin a cat. And this is a very, very important slide, and I think is probably the most important slide in this presentation today, because when we talk about retirement or we talk about financial planning, it's very easy to talk ourselves into a box and say, there's only one way to do it. I should invest in a pension scheme or I should buy a property. I have a client that came to me and said, Twape, I want to buy a property in the UK. And I said, okay, great, fantastic. Why? And he said, oh, because I just think that it's a good idea. I said, yes, but why? What is the property is the vehicle, but what is it that you wish to achieve? And he said, well, I've got 2 young children, and what I really worry about and what I really care about is the well-being of my 2 children. I said, okay. So when we continue to unpack it, what became abundantly clear was that what he wanted was not a property. What he wanted was a vehicle, an asset, an investment, a product, a portfolio, which could survive his own life, that he could have the peace of mind that his children were taken care of. So what he said to me was, look, Twape, if I buy a property in the UK, the gentleman is from Zimbabwe. If I buy a property in the UK, I have peace of mind that there'll be a tenant in that property, and that tenant will pay the rent, and my children will have an income, and they can benefit from that investment long after I'm gone. So what he was concerned with was the well-being of his child, and he wanted something that his children could benefit from long after he was gone. So I spoke to him about his children, and he told me their ages, and he told me what his plans were, and he told me that he actually was planning on sending his children to university in the UK. So the property in the UK ticked a second box, which was, if my kids go to university in the UK one day, they'll be able to live in the property that I buy. I said, okay. And we sat down and we spoke about it because his first-born child was 2 years old. His second-born child was recently born. So what we did was we made a plan with him, and he bought a property in the UK worth £400,000. He bought this £400,000 on a mortgage. Because of the way that the mortgage was set up, he needed to find £100,000 as a deposit, which he put down. The rental income will go towards paying the monthly mortgage payments. But what he said to me was, Twape, I want to pay this off over the next 5 years. I want to pay off the whole £400,000 over the next 5 years. And this was his thought process. My son is 2. It'd take me 5 years to finish paying this off. My child would be 7. So the plan that we put together for him was that He was also concerned with how he was going to pay for his children's university fees, because if he passes away and he's not here, how is the university fees going to get paid for? So what we did was we blended the UK property and the education planning into one plan. He buys the property, 400,000. He puts the deposit. He pays it off over 5 years. At year number 5, he owns it. So the rental income now is pure profit to him. That rental income, which we are estimating will be about £1,800, is then going to be fed into an investment, a regular savings product, where 1,800 is going to go into the investment for a period of 10 years. He is estimating that his child is going to go to university at 17. 2 years old, plus 5 is 7, plus 10 is 17. If we put a 10-year policy in front of him, which is paying in 1,800, what has he then achieved? He's achieved several things. At year 17, there will be a property, and we've done our research and shown that properties in the UK, in the region he's looking into, are doubling, the value is doubling on average between every 11 to 14 years. So at year 17, what we're going to have is we're going to have a £400,000 property, which is now valued at roughly 800,000. We will have a property that is paying, is generating an income. He will have an investment for his child's university, which has paid for itself with these 1,800s every month for 10 years, which he can then use to pay for his school fees. And then what he has then built underneath it is that he has gotten a life insurance policy for the value of the loan. Because if anything happens to him over the next 5 years, or over the next 20 years, which is the period of the mortgage, and he's not there to pay it off, and he's not there to be able to take care of the loan, his family will get the life insurance policy. They'll go to the bank and pay off the loan. They will hold the property 100%. And now he is able to continue to provide for his family while he's gone. So if somebody comes to me and says, I want to plan for my children's education, there's a wider, deeper conversation to have about how we're going to do that, because there are so many ways that we can structure and build portfolios to be able to meet whatever it is that you want or need in your particular circumstances. And all of this can be achieved while you are an expat, wherever it is that you are working. The most important thing that underpins all of this, and is probably the most important aspect of my job, is the formation of trusts, the writing of wills, and the understanding around succession planning. This is a very, very commonly overlooked aspect of financial planning. And I think that's the case primarily because it's so far away. It feels so far away. It's so far away in the future. But if you take my advice and you build up all of these things, or another way to look at it, if you have all of these things, savings, properties, investments, pensions, life insurance policies, and they're all in your home country for argument's sake, how are all of those things protected? A very, very simple question that I want everybody on this call to ask is, if something happened to you tomorrow, what is going to happen to your financial dependents? Particularly the African condition. How many of us know of a family that was doing very well when the matriarch or the patriarch was alive, and on their death, everything fell apart? Assets got sold off, family members took things away. But particularly because we're talking about the offshore space and talking about regions that we're not from, you might be able to tell me exactly what's going to happen with you passing on your estate from in Kenya or in Uganda or in Rwanda. But if you have a property in the UK, you've got a bank account offshore, you've got an investment platform in the Isle of Man, what happens in the event of your death? And I have a client who I met very recently, and he had quite a considerable sum of cash sitting in a bank account. And I said to him, what happens if you die tomorrow? And he said, Twape, what do you mean? I said, like, simple, with a bank account. Do you know how a bank account works when you die? And he said, no, I don't. The bank's never told me. I said, the moment you die, the bank freezes the account. This is every bank in the world. The owner of the account is no longer there. And in his particular case, his wife also used the account. It was their account. They were been married for 40 years. They both used the account. I said, if you die tomorrow, your wife isn't going to be able to access any of this money. And because it's an offshore bank account, your wife is going to have to follow whatever the procedures are of that country. When it comes to passing it on, she's going to need to, inform the bank about your death, submit the death certificates. There's probably going to need to be a lot of administration. We have had cases of people not being able to access deceased loved ones' bank accounts for up to 2 to 3 years. So the question to ask yourself is, even if it's just cash that you have in the bank, if something happens to you tomorrow, how is this going to get passed on to your children? So one of the most important parts of the work that I do, which ring fences all of the items that we've spoken about today, particularly for people working as expats, is the setting up of offshore trusts to be able to hold and secure all of the assets that you've been able to build up in your portfolio, so that when something happens to you, there is a seamless passage of wealth from yourself to your loved ones, be it a spouse, be it children. Because what trusts do is that trusts take assets out of your name and place it onto the trust. It ring fences you from inheritance tax. It ring fences anybody who's ever, and on this call, that has ever had the unfortunate reality of having to wind up in a estate of a loved one will know just how complicated and time-consuming going through probate can be. Administrators of your estate having to find executors, having to go through the whole process when a loved one has died, and you should just be focusing on grieving and dealing with the bereavement. We believe at Carrick Wealth that we have positioned ourselves perfectly to be able to deal with all of these things that we have talked about. The Carrick group of companies has been set up in such a way that all of these different elements that I have discussed, we are able to help our clients with all of those things. Within the Carrick group of companies is Carrick Wealth, which is direct customer advisory services, which I offer. We have Carrick Consult, which is a fully fledged fiduciary services business, which is available to our clients when it comes to will writing, tax advice, understanding what inheritance tax burdens are, all in-house for us to be able to offer the best-in-class advice to our clients. Carrick FX is a fully fledged forex services company, which is very, very relevant when you are an expat and it comes to needing to move cash from one currency to another and needing a currency service to be able to change naira into dollars or turn dirhams into pounds, whatever the case may be. Carrick International Property is a fully fledged property business which we have built within our business to be able to take our clients and put them in Europe and make them landlords in Europe. Carrick Catalyst, though, is probably one of the most exciting parts of our constellation of businesses, because this offers corporate services, because a lot of the individuals that we meet with are business people, running businesses, managing businesses. This is a business-to-business financial advisory service which is able to offer offshore group company pension schemes, offshore group life cover, offshore financial solution, white labeling of CRM systems, all in-house, so that we can enhance not only your personal wealth, but your corporate wealth, all in-house. Our goal to drive down fees has also led to the establishment of Linked Investment Managers, which is a boutique discretionary fund manager which is built and we house in-house, which we are able to place our clients' funds in, so that we're able to make sure that the fees that they're being charged are kept as low as possible, so that they're able to see the best returns. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak, to hear me speak with you today, because these issues that are being discussed, these issues that I've raised, are some of the things that expatriates think about and deal with and need help navigating. And sometimes it's just as simple as, I don't know where to start and I don't know who to speak to. The person you can speak to is me. The company that can help with this is Carrick. And we are more than happy and willing to take a meeting and explore further how you can start to answer the questions that you and your families have been asking yourselves as expatriates. It is a quarter to the hour based on my watch. We had allocated an hour for this session. I would like to open the floor to any questions that anybody on the webinar may have. If you click on the chat, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat that you would like for me to address right away. For your information, a recording of this webinar will be sent to everybody who registered for this webinar within the next 24 hours. So if there's anything you would like to go back on, you can feel free to do so. Similarly, all of my contacts are on the screen now. Please feel free to jot down my details and reach out to me. A question that I get asked often is, if I want to speak to an advisor from Carrick, what's the next step? The next step is please send me an email, drop me a WhatsApp on the number that's on the screen is on WhatsApp. Drop me a WhatsApp and we can schedule a 30 to 45-minute call. A lot has been covered, obviously, in this session, and we can go deeper on some of these topics because, as mentioned, everybody's individual circumstances are different, and it does require individual considerations. And a question has come through here, and the question is there a minimum amount or a limit to what I can invest? The answer to that question is no. The most important thing would be for us to have a discovery session to understand exactly what your particular needs are and whether your particular needs dictate needing an investment. It might be another one of the elements of the financial planning phase that would need to come first. So there are no minimums, because until we know exactly what it is that we're dealing with, it's hard to dictate what those are. Now, naturally, if you are looking to buy a property, there'll be minimum property prices, or certain investments have thresholds, but that is something that can be tackled in more detail when we have a private one-on-one session. I think I saw this question late. I think I've already answered this question. Okay, there was another question that came in saying, how do I go about meeting somebody from Carrick Wealth? Yeah, so I've dealt with that. My contacts are on the screen, and you can reach out. For individuals in Malawi, we are limited to the Malawi office. Are we limited to the Malawi office? I assume what the question means by are we limited to the Malawi office is, are you only limited to being able to work with the people that are in the Malawi office? The answer is no. For individuals in Malawi, you are not limited to the Malawi office. Anywhere where there's a Carrick office, you can meet with somebody there. Similarly, if you become a Carrick client in Malawi, you are a Carrick client in any one of our countries. So if you become a Carrick client in Malawi, you can walk into our office in Sandton and similarly be helped. So you're not limited to just Malawi. Being a Malawian, you can also speak to me. I can deal with any queries, and if there is Malawi specific advice, maybe concerning the Reserve Bank, concerning the Forex issues going on in Malawi, if there's any need to specifically talk to the guys in Malawi, or speaking to the local bank, NBS, National Bank, whichever bank you deal with, or there's specific things that you need to look at in terms of the inheritance tax laws in Malawi, obviously those things would probably be channeled towards the Malawi team, but you are not limited to the Malawi office. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Okay, that seems to be all of the questions. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. Thank you so much for taking the time. I hope everybody has had an opportunity to get down my number for those that need it. The recording of the webinar will be shared in the next 24 hours. I look forward to hearing from you all. I hope that this session has been informative. Thank you so much. Have a lovely end to the week. Thank you so much for your time. Cheers.